Okay, as it's 30 days before Pesach, I thought this would be an opportunity to introduce some new people to Daf Yomi. So I thought I'd give it a go. I'm going to try and teach the last chapter of Psachim, Mesechet Psachim, which is actually now being learnt in the Daf Yomi cycle. And it seems to really fit very nicely in with the 30 days before Pesach rule. So 30 days before Pesach, we should start learning about Pesach. And here we have the last chapter of Sefer Psachim, which is all about the Seder. And it's so fitting to be learning it now that I figured it would be a good opportunity to introduce new people to Daf Yomi who might not necessarily have got into it otherwise. So I thought I'd give it a go to teach it here. So we are starting on page Tzadi Tet Amud Bet. It is the chapter called Arvei Psachim, and it starts as follows. It says, Erev Psachim samuch lamincha lo yochal adam ad shetechashech. So it says, the first thing it says is that on Erev Pesach, before Seder night, you should not eat, and nobody should eat from mincha until nightfall. In order to be, the idea is that in order that you should be like hungry, and you should come into the Seder with an empty stomach. Now, I wanted to show you, in order to understand this properly, I wanted to show you what this is referring to. What are these ideas? So I'm going to share my screen. I have here some basics ideas of what the year looks like. What are the hours of the day? And the hours of the day look like this. We have the day is divided into 12 separate hours. So here, Netzach Hama, that is the beginning of the day. That is when the sun is fully risen. And here is Shkiat Hama, that's when the sun is fully down. Now, after that, of course, there's still a bit of light, and it goes on until Seder Kochavim. That's already nighttime. That's already when it's getting, the sun's already gone down. About the time that the sun disk is above, the sun's disk rises above the horizon, that'll be Netzach Hama, and then it goes around, and it comes to the Shkia, the Hama, which is the sunset, and then it goes down below the horizon. So that's, as we divide the time that it's in the sky into 12 separate hours. In the middle one, the end of the 6th hour, is what's called Chatzot Hayom, or midday, noon. But we are in this particular Mishnah, we are talking about Mincha, and Mincha is over here. Okay, mincha is, there's actually two different minchas. There's mincha ketana, which is, there's actually three different minchas. There's mincha gdola, mincha ketana, and plaga mincha. So these are the different minchas that we have here. So we have mincha ketana is at nine and a half hours. So what we're talking about here is mincha ketana. So from 9.5 hours until the evening, you're not supposed to eat that length of time. That's not what you're supposed to, when you're supposed to be eating before Pesach. So what I wanted to show you here was the idea of what's going on in the Mishnah. So the Mishnah is saying, right, very clearly, the Mishnah is saying that you're not allowed to eat, and I've prepared another slide for this. I'm going to see if I can find it. The Mishnah is saying that you're not allowed to eat from samuch lamincha. Right? Samuch lamincha. Now, we've got various different opinions coming up in the Gemara, but we shall see them shortly. But at the moment, lo yochal adam pesach from samuch lamincha. Now, as we shall see later on, there are a number of different opinions about what this actually means, because we'll see that in the Gemara, there's a machloket. But for the time being, let's look at the lo yochal adam b'pesach, because that's the one that's most important to us at the moment. Forget the Rav Huna thing, we'll come to that at the end. So what's the next thing? It says, Afilu anisha b'Yisrael, even the poorest man in the whole of Israel, lo yochal ad sheyesev, when he does eat, he shouldn't eat until he has lent like a Roman citizen. He should lean and eat like a rich man, even the poorest person. And not only that, but when he does eat, lo yiftachu me arba kosot, and he shouldn't he shouldn't have fewer than 4 cups of wine, which is a lot of wine to be drinking for the poor man. And what if you can't afford it? It says va'afilu mina tamchui, which means that you can even pay this from the public purse, from the public charity. The tamchui is the charity purse. So the charity is going to pay for a poor man to drink wine. That's a very unusual thing for charity to be done. Charity is usually for the essentials. So these 4 cups of wine are considered essentials, and they can be paid for from the charity box for poor people to have 4 cups of wine on Seder night. That's the Mishnah. Now, in the Gemara today, what we're going to be looking at is a little discussion about Lo yochal adam b'Pesach. That's what the Mishnah said. Lo yochal adam samuch lamincha. Okay, you shouldn't eat from mincha until nightfall. You shouldn't be eating. And the Gemara is what it's going to do now. It's going to bring another saying in which this is said in general about every Erev Pesach, every Erev Shabbat. On every Friday, you shouldn't be eating from mincha till nightfall, and on every Erev Yom Tov, you shouldn't be eating from mincha till nightfall. So what's special about Pesach? Why have they brought this Mishnah? Right, that's the Gemara is going to be dealing with. That thing. It's going to say, look, they're going to bring this other opinion that says that every week's the same. It's not special for Pesach. And they're going to say, so why did they learn it for Pesach? And then they're going to try and work out why they might have learned it for Pesach. So let's have a look inside. What it actually says in the Gemara is this: My iria alve Pesachim. What's so special about Erev Pesach? Afilu alve Shabbatot v'yamim tovim. Even every Erev Yom Tov and every Erev Shabbos, every Friday is exactly the same thing. Nami. How do we know that? The Tanya. And here I've got a Breita. The Breita is a piece of material written by the same people spoken by the same people that wrote the Mishnah, right? These are the same characters and they said the same things. And this is another statement. Let's see what this statement is. It says, Tanya, Lo yochal adam ba'arvei Shabbatot v'yamim tovim. This one says almost exactly the same thing. You can't eat on any Friday or any Erev Yom Tov, mincha v'lamala, from mincha to the end. It seems to be saying exactly the same thing. Kadesh yikanes l'Shabbat, shehu te'ava, so that when you come into Shabbat, you've got a good appetite to eat. So that's what the Mishnah, that's what this new piece of Breita is saying. So what we're going to look at now is we have on the one hand, we have the Mishnah, which says it's only for Pesach. And on the other hand, we have a Breita, which says for every day of the week. But this, in fact, is not universally accepted, this Breita. It says that what I just read to you is Divrei Rabbi Yehuda. That's Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. Rabbi Yehuda says on every day of the week that you can't, every Friday during the year, you can't eat from mincha till the end. But Rabbi Yossi disagrees. Rabbi Yossi says, Ochel v'holech ad shetechashech. Rabbi Yossi completely disagrees. He says there's no such thing. You don't have to every day of every week eat from not stop eating, fast all the way from mincha till the Erev Shabbos. That's not the way it works. That's not the way it works. Okay. So anyway, how do you understand these both things? So why have they brought this special case for Psachim, Pesach, when every week is exactly the same? There's a couple of ways of understanding this. Rav Huna, who's one of the Amoraim, he wasn't one of the rabbis from the Mishnah. He's one of the Mashi rabbis from the Gemara a bit later on. And Rav Huna has an opinion. He says, look at this very carefully. You've got the Mishnah in Pesach, which says you can't eat from mincha to the end. And in the Breita that I just brought, you have two different opinions. There's Rabbi Yehuda, who seems to be saying the same thing, but Rabbi Yossi says you don't have to every week. Maybe the thing here in Pesach is only talking about Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi does not think you need to fast every day of the year, every week of the year, but you do need to fast on Pesach. And that's what he says. So it says, Amar Rav Huna. Rav Huna says, Lo tzricha, we don't need our new Mishnah, Ela la Rabbi Yossi. We only need it for Rabbi Yossi, because Rabbi Yossi says you're not allowed to eat from mincha regularly on Pesach. Only on Pesach. That's Rabbi Yossi's opinion. So this whole thing in Pesach is particular for Rabbi Yossi, because Rabbi Yossi does not think you need to fast all year, but he does think you need to fast on Pesach. So that's why we have this special Mishnah for Pesach. The Amar, because he says for every day of the year, Rabbi Yossi says, Ochel v'holech ad shetechashech. When he says that, Hani Mili ba'arvei Shabbatot, he's talking specifically about Erev Shabbat and Erev Yom Tov, v'yamim tovim, aval be'erev Pesach. But on Erev Pesach, mishum chiyuva de matzah, on Erev Pesach, you've got a special rule that you have to eat matzah. And so therefore he agrees on this particular case with Rabbi Yehuda. As he agrees with the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. That's Rav Huna's expression. Rav Huna, he seems to understand the Mishnah. He seems to work very nicely with Rav Huna. Okay, Rav Papa, who's a friend of Rav Huna's, right? He lived at the same time as Rav Huna, and he's now coming, and he's actually coming in a different opinion. Rav Papa, he says, you know what? I can make this work even for Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda, who says every day of the year. right? Every week of the year, you're not allowed to eat on Erev Shabbat from Mincha onwards. So Rav Papa says, I can make this work for every day of the year. How can Rav Papa make it work for every week of the year? Because he said because Rabbi Yehuda seems to be repeating it every day. So he says, no, I can make this work even for Rabbi Yehuda every day of the year. How does that work? Because look, let's be more careful about reading it. The Mishnah says, listen to the words. The Mishnah says, Erev Pesachim, Samuch la Mincha. This is Samuch la Mincha here. Samuch la Mincha is before Mincha. Mincha Ktana, I told you, was 9.5 hours. Samuch la Mincha is going to be earlier than 9.5 hours. So Rav Yehuda seems to think that from earlier, you're not allowed to eat. So now let's have a look. What's Rav Huna saying? So what's Rav Papa saying? Rav Papa's saying the following. He's saying, Rav, maybe during the year, and in the because in the Breita, it doesn't say Samuch la Mincha. It says Mincha lamala. It says from Mincha onwards. So maybe what's going on here, Rabbi Yehuda is saying that every week, every Shabbat, you're not allowed to eat from Mincha Ktana, so from 9.5 hours. But on Pesach, you're not allowed to eat from 9 hours. So there is a difference between Rabbi Yehuda in the Shabbat and Rabbi Yehuda in Pesach. And that's what Rav Papa's saying. So Rav Papa's saying, Rav Papa Amar afilu tema Rabbi Yehuda. I can make this work even for Rabbi Yehuda. I can have Rabbi Yehuda making sense in this Mishnah and in the other Mishnah. How do I do that? But Arvei Shabbatot v'yamim tovim min hamincha lemala hu da'asir. If on Shabbat and Yom Tov, then from Mincha and above is he can't eat. But close to Mincha, Samuch la Mincha, which is slightly earlier, Shari, then you're allowed to. Aval be'erev ha-Pesach, but on Erev Pesach, afilu samuch lemincha nami asur. Even on Erev Pesach, even earlier is different. So we've got a difference between Rabbi Yehuda in Shabbat and Rabbi Yehuda in Pesach. So you don't have to say that the Mishnah is only according to Rabbi Yossi. It could be according to Rabbi Yehuda as well. We do have a difference between the Mishnah and the Breita on Erev Pesach. Okay, so that's fine until you read the next Breita. They go, hang on, that doesn't work because I actually can find you a Breita, another piece of Tonight material, another piece written by the same people in the Breita. But this one actually specifically says that Rabbi Yehuda does think you need to eat. So the Breita actually goes as far as this. The Breita says Rabbi Yehuda even on Shabbat says Samuch la Mincha. I'll read you this Breita and you'll see what I mean. It says, Lo yochal, this is the Breita, the new Breita. Lo yochal adam be'erev Shabbat v'yamim tovim mi 9 sha'ot v'lemala kadei sheyikanesh Shabbat shehu v'te'ava v'divrei Rabbi Yehuda. So this is almost exactly the same as the second Breita, the Breita that we read before, right? But this time, instead of saying from Mincha, it specifically says from 9, okay? The 9th hour, the end of the 9th hour is Samuch la Mincha. It's not Mincha Ktana. It's not Mincha Gdola. It's not Plaga Mincha. It's Samuch la Mincha. It's close to Mincha. So this seems to suggest that Rav Papa can't possibly work, right? In this Mishnah, in this Breita as well, Rabbi Yossi Omer Ochel v'holech ad shetechashech. So Rabbi Yossi again disagrees. But the problem is that this Breita, which we've just brought, has Rabbi Yehuda saying that even from Samuch la Mincha. So we're left with the problem. Rav Papa's solution no longer works because Rav Papa can no longer say that Rabbi Yehuda intended to have that Mincha in the Breita was referring to actually 9.5 hours because this Breita actually says 9 hours. So this doesn't seem to work. Now we're on the last line of Tzadi Tet Amud Bet. Amar Mar Zutra says, says we've got two Breitas. We've got a Breita at the beginning in which it does not say 9 hours. It says Rabbi Yehuda says from Mincha. We have another Breita which says from 9 hours. One of these Breitas has been remembered wrong because they're not identical. How do we know which one it was? We can't. Maybe Rav Papa's right, and the first Mishnah was remembered. The first Breita was remembered correctly, or maybe the second Breita's right. The second Breita's right, and then Rav Papa does not work because it was not, the second Breita was not remembered correctly, and therefore, in fact, it just said Mincha. How do we know which one is actually remembered correctly? And we're now at the beginning of Kuf Amud Aleph, and so we're trying to decide which of these brightas is correct, and we'd actually find someone who remembers learning this brighta. And it says as follows: we're trying. How do we know which brighta is correct? Amarle, Merema, who's another one of the Amoraim, he comes along and says, V'itema Rav Yema, maybe Rav Yema said it, but what's important is that this was actually a testimony, that I remember learning this and I know that it's accurate. How do I know it's accurate? Because Ana Iklai B'Pirka, the Rav Pinchas, I went once to a famous rabbi's yeshiva, and this was one of the top rabbis at the time, a real authority, Rav Pinchas, Berei the Rav Ami, the son of Rabbi Ami, and Kam Tana and his expert memory man, because what they had was they had someone called a Tana who would remember the Mishnayot, and his job was to recite the Mishnayot, and they were very, very reliable. They had these very, very good memories. So this guy he was basically like a book. He was there, and his job was to remember the Mishnayot. And when you couldn't remember Mishnah, you'd say, Tana, can you tell me the Mishnah? And can you tell me this brighter? Can you remind me what it said? And he would explain word for word. He would just like recite word for word. And I remember being at this very famous yeshiva of Rav Pinchas, and the Tana stood up, the Tani Kameh, and he read up and he read the Mishnah read the brighter like the second brighter, wherein it says 9 hours, not the one that says Mincha, but the one that says 9 hours. Not only that, V'kibla, mine, Rav Pinchas accepted it from him. So therefore we know Ihachi kasha. So therefore, we know for sure that it does not work. We know for sure that this is a problem for Rav Papa. Because if we know that the brighter is accurate, then you can no longer say that Rav Yehuda every Shabbat says that it's coming forward. And all this we've learned in order to be clear that we do know that the solution to why there's two Mishnayot, there's one Mishnah on Pesach and one during the year, that the reason why we've had this thing on Pesach is because specifically Rabbi Yossi even agrees, right? So he says, Machavrata, Rav Huna, that it has to be like Rav Huna. Rav Huna's opinion is for the Rav Huna. So therefore we know for sure that it's according to Rav Huna, and Rav Huna says that even Rabbi Yossi would agree that you don't eat before after Mincha on Erev Pesach. So there seems to be an overall agreement that on Erev Pesach you don't eat from about 9 o'clock in the afternoon, which is about 3 o'clock in the afternoon on a regular Pesach day, and therefore you don't eat from then until evening, so that you can come into Pesach hungry. And hopefully we will continue with this tomorrow.